In a traffic accident, my left leg was severely fractured and I underwent multiple surgeries. In order to relieve my pain, doctors kept advising me to take painkillers, which I later became dependent on, and I still need them to this day. It helps me feel satisfied. There was a time when I decided not to take painkillers and I felt like a drug addict, instead of a person suffering from a disease. So, I started taking an over-the-counter painkiller. I felt that this pain medication should not be too dependent. I just wanted to live, and chronic pain can be devastating to your life. I take a lot of painkillers every day. Some people may think I enjoy a high while taking these painkillers. However, this is not the case. When I take these painkillers, I don't feel them too strongly. I could taste this drug every time I breathed. It was a foul smell. We are all well aware of this nasty smell. Even though this medicine is over the counter, you have to go to a different store if you want to buy it in bulk. I would take it every time I felt pain. I didn't take it strictly as prescribed. One morning I got a cold. I was so sick I thought it might be the flu. I took a sick day off to rest at home and I took some cold medicine. But I didn't recover the next day. Then I took another day off work, and in the evening I took a lot of painkillers, and I took them even though I felt very sick. I felt like I was going to die. During this time, I was on my own. Because my wife and I had separated, we weren't divorced. That night, my wife came to my house and she told me to go to the hospital. My tinnitus was so bad that it felt like I was soaking in water. I couldn't stand up, and I was dizzy as hell. It was also very difficult to breathe. The doctor thought I just had a bad case of the flu and gave me some antibiotics. I didn't tell the doctor that I was taking a lot of pain medication every day. Everyone around me knew I was taking painkillers, but the amount they didn't know. I could pour 20 pills into my hand and take a sip of water and just swallow them all. No problem at all. Since I was so sick, I reduced the number of painkillers. On the morning of the third day of illness, I could barely hear out of my ears. I felt muscle pain and had increasing difficulty breathing. That evening, my wife came to my house. Many memories became blurry. I remember swallowing the rest of my pills before my wife arrived. My wife saw that I was in bad shape and took me to the emergency room of the local hospital where the nurse physically examined me and I was admitted to a larger hospital. I remember being transported via ambulance. During the transport, my breathing became very difficult and I think it was the oxygen mask. I managed to take off the oxygen mask and the nurse immediately put it back on me. I remember she was not very happy with me at that time. Every time I tried to take off the mask, she put it back on. Then I got to the hospital and I knew I was in a bad way and I didn't have any more time. I said to the doctor, "Please tell my wife and children that I love them." It was very important for me to say those words. I knew I was dead. The moment I said those words, I had a feeling of relief. After struggling for days, it was as if a switch had been flipped. At first, I could hear the commotion of the doctors and nurses who were doing everything they could to save my life. I could feel their desperation. My eyes began to grow dark, and the colors in my vision went from bright to dull, then darker, and finally to black. I had an incredible sense of floating. We have all felt this feeling before. When the roller coaster reaches the top and runs downward, we get a sinking feeling in the pit of our stomachs. I knew I was leaving my body. I feel better. The pain of the past few days is gone. I am able to breathe effortlessly and my hearing is back to normal. I no longer felt nauseous. It was like a switch had been flipped. Unfortunately, this peace didn't last long. The peace I had enjoyed in the last few seconds was about to disappear. Like snatching a cane from an old man's hand. Imagine suddenly hearing a high-pitched scream in the silence of the night. It's unsettling. Could this be my destination? Hell is real. It's full of filth and evil and in a never-ending cycle, if snakes are the animal you fear most. Then be prepared for it to crawl all over you and maybe even burrow into your skin. And it will never stop. As I crawled out of the darkness, I came to a red space. The red became deeper and deeper. I was able to distinguish things around me, and they were all red. Only the shades of color were different. I found myself standing on a red catwalk. Decay and stench were in every corner. There was no way for me to get out of here. I didn't see any signs of life. No trees or bushes. I couldn't see any animals. It seemed to me that this was a dead world. There was once life here, but it is long gone. There are remnants of trees. Crumbling buildings. Similar to a post-war city. Then I heard voices. I didn't hear the singing of birds, the laughter of friends. What I heard was the wailing of pain, the screams of the tortured. All around me were such sounds. I was sure I hadn't reached the deepest depths of hell. Now I was alone. The atmosphere is depressing. The smell of this wasteland was disgusting. It smells of death, like a rotting animal, like the smell of an old house basement, and it makes me want to vomit, and there's no place to escape. It was very hot and muggy, similar to the feeling you get when you first turn on the oven, and I saw no sign of relief. There is no lake or pond. I started walking along the footbridge, trying to find other people. At the same time, I was terrified of who I might find. The screams of other spirits could be heard, but no one could be seen. I walked to the end of the footbridge. Every step I took was hard. When I reached the end, below me were some monsters. They were terrible beasts. These monsters were born out of hell. They had a very big mouth. Big enough to swallow me whole, and I could see their sharp teeth. It was as if they were looking forward to my arrival. Countless eyes were staring at me. As I gazed into these eyes, I felt intelligence. They were conscious, as if their food was my inner fear. I am powerless to resist. I fell over the edge. They hovered, covered in slime. My fall was fast. After a while, I found myself back on the catwalk, and the experience had a big impact on me. The doctor gave me hemodialysis to get all the aspirin out of my system. The doctor told my wife that my chances of surviving were very slim, and the doctor suggested telling my other loved ones. My body had been deprived of oxygen for several days. Every organ was failing, and the other thing I knew, I was awakened in a hospital room and I was in the intensive care unit. I had an oxygen mask on and a tube in my throat. It was a very peculiar feeling. Over the next few days, my condition gradually improved. I was moved to a regular ward and I was blessed to have such a loving family. They came to visit me every day. It made me feel very warm.